This Technomage episode you sent about Apple TV's foundation, wow, it really got me thinking.
It's amazing how science fiction can do that, right?
Totally. I mean, it's one thing to enjoy the show, but then to have it make you reflect on, like, our world today, 2024. That's wild.
It speaks to the power of sci-fi. It uses these fantastical elements, spaceships, time travel, whatever, to really explore anxieties and hopes that we have that are very real.
And what I find fascinating is this episode of Technomage, it's arguing that foundation, which is based on Isaac Asimov's novels, it's like scarily relevant to the moment we're living in now.
Absolutely. What's even more interesting is that Asimov was writing back in the 1940s. But even then, he was tapping into these anxieties that still feel so contemporary.
Makes you wonder, like, do we ever really learn from history? And I'm even including fictional history in that. But, okay, before we go down that rabbit hole, maybe we should start with those three emperors. Dawn, Day, and Dusk. Even just their names. It feels like they're trying to tell us something.
You're picking up on something really important there. The Technomage. It points out that those names, they're not just a quirky detail. They represent this, deep stagnation at the heart of this galactic empire. These emperors are clones of each other, ruling in this unbroken line. It's like this refusal to change, this assumption that the way things have always been is how they should always be.
Which is so ironic. They literally name themselves after parts of a cycle, like a day. It implies change, but then they don't. And this is where it starts hitting a little too close to home, don't you think? I mean, we've got climate scientists freaking out, economic inequality getting worse and worse, and political systems, they're like frozen in time.
hmm That feeling of stagnation, clinging to these outdated systems, these power structures, that's a key parallel that Technomage identifies between that galactic empire, fictional, and our world in 2024. It's like Asimov looked into the future and he saw his own time reflected back. A world trying to deal with the aftermath of global conflict and then facing down even greater catastrophe.
And in Foundation, that sense of looming catastrophe is like embodied in the predicted fall of the empire, which is where Hari Seldon and his super famous plan come in, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, this is where the episode really grabbed me. What did you think about their take on the whole Seldon plan?
Well, the episode makes this really interesting link between the Seldon plan and the anxieties of Asimov's time, but also our own time, right now. Remember, Asimov was writing right after World War II when the threat of nuclear war, it was huge, right? It was like this weight on everyone. So the Seldon plan, with all its complex calculations, this long-term vision, it kind of feels like a response to that anxiety, right? Like a blueprint to help the world navigate total chaos.
So it's like this little flicker of hope in all the darkness. Like maybe, just maybe, we can use, I don't know, smarts and planning to stop a total disaster from happening.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not like a quick fix or anything though, right?
Yeah, right.
Technomage hinted at some pretty radical stuff woven into that plan.
Yeah, it's not about finding this magical solution or a piece of technology to fix everything. The Seldon plan, it's built on this whole idea of psychohistory, which is, well, Asimov basically invented it for the books. It's the idea that you can use math to model how big groups of people behave, and then predict or even try to influence the future. And what makes psychohistory so interesting, so relevant, is that it makes us think about how much we really understand. We think we're in control, but are we? Really?
Okay, that is freaking me out, and I see exactly what you mean, right? Because it's like today, it's algorithms, right? They're shaping what we see online. They're messing with elections. They can even predict what we buy. It's like Asimov knew this weird dance we'd be doing between free will and these massive forces controlling our lives.
Yes. And that is exactly where the Seldon plan, the real point of it, comes in. It's not about controlling every single thing that happens, but understanding those huge forces you're talking about.
Yeah.
And nudging them. Moving them in a direction where there's less chaos, less suffering. It's like a societal intervention, steering a ship around a bunch of rocks. But to do it, you got to make some tough course changes along the way, right?
And those course corrections, that's where things always get interesting. Because the episode, it points out that the Seldon plan, it doesn't shy away from tough choices at all. It's all about sacrifice in the now for a better future. It made me think about how often we just resist those choices, we'd rather have what's familiar even if it's not working.
And that brings us back to those emperors, Dawn, Day, and Dusk. Just them existing, right? It's a big sign that says we refuse to change, to adapt. But the Seldon plan, it demands adaptation, even if it's painful or messy at first. And Technomage argues that this is where the parallel to climate change becomes impossible to ignore.
It's true. It's like we're stuck in this galactic empire that we made ourselves. We're so used to our comfy lives that we don't want to change, even when not changing is like way worse.
Did the Technomage have any specific examples from the Seldon plan, like, to prove this point?
Actually, yeah, they had a really good example about one of the first crises the Foundation had to deal with. Yeah, they talked about how the Foundation, they basically had to rebuild their whole energy system, like from scratch.
Right. The old empire, they relied on all this unsustainable tech,
Yeah.
right? So the Seldon plan, it forced them to deal with that directly.
Okay, I mean, that is like a perfect parallel to what we're going through now with renewable energy. It's not just about like ditching fossil fuels and we're good. It's about this total rethink. How we get energy, how much we use, even how we design our cities. It's huge.
Exactly. And that's the point.
Yeah.
The Seldon plan, it's like this reminder that sometimes these impossible problems, they force us to invent new things, to find better ways of doing things. It's like Asimov is telling us, hey,
Which brings us back to leadership, right? Because to make those bold moves, to actually get people through those rough transitions, you need a special kind of leader. Someone who can like actually put the long game first, even if it means losing in the short term. And honestly, those leaders, they're kind of hard to find these days.
totally. And Technomage, they make that comparison too, between those emperors who are just stuck versus the leaders who come up in the Foundation. Those Foundation leaders, they aren't perfect. They mess up, they have doubts, but they've got this one thing. They'll make the hard decisions, even when it's not popular, even if it costs them. That's real courage, being the grown-up, even when everyone else wants the easy way out.
It's like that saying, hard choices, easy life. Easy choices, hard life. We've gotten so used to like the idea of easy choices, instant gratification, that we forgot about the bigger picture. So I gotta ask, did Technomage give us any hope? Like, is there a way to break this cycle of messing up over and over again?
I think even just talking about these things, right, using sci-fi to understand our own world better, that's hope right there.
Yeah.
Technomage makes the point that just seeing those patterns, those echoes of the Galactic Empire, but in our time, that's the first step to breaking free. Asimov wasn't trying to, like, predict the future. He was warning us, showing us what could happen if we're not careful.
So Foundation, it's not a prophecy, it's like this urgent message.
Exactly. We get to decide. We have the power and the responsibility to make the future. And maybe, just maybe, by understanding the mistakes from the past, from a galaxy far, far away or right here, we can do better this time.
Yeah. A future that hopefully doesn't involve a bunch of clones running things into the ground. This deep dive has really given me a lot to think about. And to our listener, if this got you curious, you should check out that Technomage episode yourself and then dive into Asimov's Foundation. It might just make you see our world and the choices we have in front of us in a whole new way.